in the School of Business at Conestoga College, Institute of Technology and Advanced Learning in Kitchener, Ontario, Canada. I'm co-author and co-project lead for Building a Medical Terminology Foundation open educational resource.
Hi and welcome. I'm Marie Rutherford, professor, School of Business, Georgian College, Barrie, Ontario, Canada, co-author and co-project lead for Building a Medical Terminology OER. Today we're going to talk to you about how we created, through a multi-institutional approach, an OER.
We're going to look at how we tackle creating an open educational resource during a pandemic using a multi-institutional collaborative approach, why collaboration was so important, our experiences and learnings of the benefits of that approach, and the challenges that we encountered, and how to advocate for open educational resources using a collaborative approach for sustainability.
We were successful in publishing our OER during the pandemic. As faculty were pivoting to a remote delivery, we had a whole list of people who signed on for the project even prior to the pandemic onslaught. So we were able to have our subject matter experts who could continued through on the project through multiple institutions. We had library supports, we had students even co-create with us, and everybody was committed to seeing the project through. I think what made the collaboration so important was that we had people who believed in the project, who seen the value surrounding the OER, what the potential it held and for our students and the opportunities it posed. We were able to have a lot of high energy. We fed off each other's as co-collaborators. It was very inspiring to see how people continued to stay within the project and stayed focused. But not only that, we were motivated to keep going. We kept bouncing ideas one on one off each other. We were able to make decisions collaboratively rather than individually. It just really created an environment that promoted that collaborative approach.
Collaboration was such an important aspect to our success because we were crowdsourcing this book. People could access the book anytime that worked for them. It had an asynchronous element. So we didn't necessarily have to all meet at the same time at, say, 3 p.m. If someone is a morning person, they were working in the morning. If someone is a night person, they were working at the night. While we did have regular check ins, they were done asynchronously as well using a communication platform.
This OER and the development of it was very different from past publishing experience for a number of reasons. At the end, the cleanup that typically goes on with a publication, and once you have the draft made, you often have to go back and look for errors and smooth it over. But the cleanup was greatly reduced with the OER. We had a lot of collaborators who were doing a lot of the self-editing pieces within the creation of this resource. We also had library support who served as a content editor who checked and double checked the work process to make sure that it was moving in a very flowing fashion. We could go back and check in with our subject matter experts. If there was a question we had about content and we needed to improve something or maybe modify something, we had that opportunity. When you're a sole author on a publication, it's very isolating. You really don't have somebody else to bounce ideas off of. You don't have that same creativity, that spark of imagination. So this publication allowed for all of those features to occur.
This was like a fabulous experience. And, after everybody jumped back in and helped us to ensure that the book would be published within our deadline that we had set for ourselves, I had this funny little thing happen because I was like, okay, we're good. We're done. We're passing it over to the copy editor. We're good. But, Marie knew. Marie is a published author, and she knew that we weren't done. That, in fact, sometimes the hardest work begins when we're thinking about the cleanup and making sure it sounds as if one person has written the book. And so that was definitely a big learning for me, was that just when you think you're done, you are in fact not done. The other pieces that were really important was to think about accessibility. And we are so thankful to have the library supports and the copy editor that we had. They were able to run every piece through an accessibility checker and then bring it back to us and say, actually, this doesn't quite meet accessibility needs. And so then we had a group of people in which we could refer to ensure that we met those accessibility needs. But the biggest thing that was so exciting about this was how willing students were to participate. We had a group of students who had committed to a certain timeline, and I wanted to be really intentional about respecting their time and what they were contributing. But they were like so excited; they fell in love with the project, and they kept coming back and saying, is there something else we could do? And they, in fact, ended up peer reviewing in a sense, and they were so excited to like pay this forward to future students. There are so many benefits to collaborating on an OER. And I would start with something like shared costs and shared expertise, where institutions can provide release time to their subject matter experts and send one or two people from each institution to collaborate. If you were able to meet in person, one institution could provide the space and lunch, and other institutions could support the people that they send through lodging. And this, I think, is the benefit to bringing this to scale. And it's also a way to bring the awareness of open educational resources and their benefits to other subject matter experts at other institutions. And then it just makes it so accessible for students and faculty to participate when you have a big collaboration project like this.
The benefits of collaboration on an OER at a multi-institutional approach are just so vast. It was an opportunity for us to ensure that we had a lot of voices in the creation or the co-creation of this resource. We had many participants from many institutions, and from that, we also ensured adoptability of the textbook. People were able to have their voice and input through the co-creation of the resource, what the resource would look like, and how it could possibly be used. The, with a co-created resource with many subject matter experts at the table, they're able to remix and reuse the content. So for instance, the book may have 20 chapters, but at one institution, they may want to use only the 10 chapters because that serves their purpose. They still have that ability to do that. Gone are the days where colleges would keep their own institutional knowledge confined within those walls. Now it's about sharing that institutional knowledge and experiencing those opportunities that arise from that. We had the opportunity to build relationships. We're sustaining those relationships with a lot of the subject matter experts that we had the pleasure of working with. Working on a project of this scale or this vastness, there's a lot of challenges that you may encounter, especially doing it for the very first time. And we do hope to do something similar, continue the flow of open education resources for our students. But one of the challenges we faced was consistency. The challenge of making the 23 odd some odd chapters all flow together and make it sound like they were all from one voice. When you have so many subject matter experts, some are highly specialized in one area of content, and their investment in that interest is highly visible in the creation. So we had to tap into that expertise, but also ensure that consistent flow. So that was a bit of a challenge. And the way we combated that was by developing a template of how each chapter should lay out. Headings, what should go here, not necessarily the content, but ideas around what content should go there. And the other challenge was honoring our subject matter experts when we got to the editing phase. In some cases, we had a lot of content in an area that we didn't need to go quite so deep, and we needed to cut it back. So we had to have some discomfort, or we experienced a little bit discomfort when we had to focus on what do we cut back and how do we have that conversation while still honoring and respecting our collaborators?
Some challenges that I had not anticipated was the amount of support required for contributors to the open educational resource. Since we were crowdsourcing this OER, we are allowing everyone into a platform that were not necessarily used to using that platform. So we encountered some technology challenges that I supported, but it took my time away from writing as an author. We had to ensure that we had extra flexibility on deadlines. And so we had it, and largely this was due to the pandemic. We had soft deadlines and we kept moving soft deadlines and we'd move again. And then finally we had to say, if we're going to make our deadline, this now has to be a hard deadline. So if I were to do this again, and I plan to, the next time we would outline clear roles right from the beginning and have designated check ins. While we did use a communication platform and that was really helpful, more monitoring was required as people were working when they could. And so that was common feedback from some of our contributors. While the OER that we produced in the sense of a textbook is similar to what we had anticipated, the piece that is different or that we lost due to the pandemic was the ability to have an time to get together to have a sprint and create ancillary resources such as slide decks, test banks, those types of things. And so, one of the things we are hoping to do is to host a sprint spring 2021, where we can do that, where we can have people peer review the book together and create those ancillary resources. And so, there might be now an opportunity, because that will likely be virtual, to include more collaboration and more voices that extend past the original institutions that were involved and perhaps cross borders. Who knows?
How we would take this further for our future development is we would reevaluate how we created the project. We would look at how we can involve more authentic co-constructing assignments, how we could trust our students and bring our students in to help us produce some of the resources. Yes, they did participate in this OER, but now that we know how it works, we would actually go a little bit deeper in the utilization of our students and really engage them in producing quality work that would actually be infused into the OER for later access and resource reflection. They can take it, our students can take it and put it in their portfolio and actually say, I participated on a publication. Look at what I did. So there's a lot of opportunity to have our subject matter experts more involved with the resources that go along with the textbook, as well as our students.
This notion of co constructing with students, I see a lot of potential for including their voices and making OERs so much more diverse. If students were to participate in co-constructing an OER with us, they would make the video content. And so it would include their voices, their images, their names. Important here that they choose to do that, of course, but it would better represent the population of students at our institutions. And of course, it would then better represent students in their resources.
As you're listening to our presentation, one of the things to consider is how to advocate to make a project like this happen. You're going to need resources, you're going to need supports, you're going to need a variety of things to make it happen. The first thing I would suggest is come up with a basic plan or what we think about what is possible. This helps us advocate for the resources and the supports that we need to make the project happen. What we came up with was a proof of concept. This is what it should look like, and this is what our goal is at the end. Studies back this up in terms of how this supports our students. And that was one of my main advocacy points with my leaders when I explained to them that I needed some time to develop this resource at my institution. I shared with my leadership the kinds of benefits that our students would experience by using an OER of this magnitude. On the first day of classes, it leveraged everybody to have the resource and to have that accessibility. And studies show when students have resources from the very first day, their chances of continuing with the course and their success is greatly enhanced.
While we know how important all of the social justice points are, you should be prepared to include a business case when asking for funding. Include things like retention stats and projected savings for students. I mean, one of the things we did is we did the math and we said to our leadership, this is how much money it's going to save students in textbook costs. A really helpful site that I found was a link to curated studies in retention by the openedgroup.org. They have a review where they've compiled and curated studies to help you with the numbers. This makes programs more marketable, and that really speaks to leadership. But most important is finding collaborators and planting seeds for change in multiple areas. For that, I believe, is how we bring open to scale and sustain it.
Thank you for joining us today and hearing about our multi-institutional collaboration that we experienced with our OER. I hope you found some good points and some key takeaways that you can apply if you're considering doing something similar or even creating an OER on your own. The collaborative aspect for us was a really added feature, and it's something that really enhanced our practice. By using this multi-institutional approach, we believe that we not only provided an opportunity to prepare a quality OER, but also work to re-imaging or reimagining the traditions of academic publishing, while creating opportunities for lasting relationships between collaborators within and beyond our own institutions.
So next steps for you. If you're watching this video at the Open Ed 20 conference, please join our Q&A. We look forward to engaging with you there. We also have set up a hashtag collaboration, COLLABORATION. You can follow us on Twitter. My Twitter handle is KCARTE02, and Marie's is at Rutherford_Marie, RUTHERFORD_MARIE. We are so grateful for the amount of support and collaboration across institutions that saw this project to a successful completion, starting with resource allocation and encouragement from our leadership, our amazing students who continued well past their initial time commitment, our subject matter experts and colleagues who, in the midst of a pandemic and increased workloads, jumped in when they could to crowdsource, curate, and assess content, to our support staff, starting with EdTech, the library, which included our copy editor, our copyright compliance librarian, and accessibility checks, and all of the amazing colleagues you see in our acknowledgement page. For without them, this project never would have happened. So thank you. We look forward to engaging with you.